Welcome to New York's number 2 sports show. The Rangers acquire defenseman Carson Soucy from the Vancouver Canucks for the third-round pick that they just acquired in the Reilly Smith trade. So that San Jose Sharks 2025 third-round pick has been immediately flipped in acquiring Carson Soucy. So I had mentioned just recently on the Reilly Smith trade episode that with the Rangers now having 9 picks in the 2025 draft, that it wouldn't surprise me that they might use one of those picks in an acquisition. That's exactly what happens here. So Carson Soucy is a left shot defenseman who is under contract through next season. So that was the other thing too. You knew that Chris Drury was not going to go for a rental. So you have Carson Soucy for this year and next year, and who knows, right? Maybe it's a situation where he's flipped next year, depending on, what goes on. But $3.25 million for this year and next year for the cap hit. And the Rangers, at this point, certainly this season, have a lot of cap space. And there was no retention. Vancouver the Rangers take on the full salary, which again makes sense. With Soucy, it's very interesting. He has not had a very good season this year with Vancouver. I mean, just in general for Vancouver, it's been a bit of a disaster. But last year, he was a lot better and was good in the playoffs. I think he was paired mostly with Tyler Myers. And Soucy is kind of, I guess, a fringe second pair, third pairing defenseman. Really, ideally, he'd be more on the third pair, but he does have, top 4 experience. Really, to give you a little bit of a summary of his career, he was drafted by the Minnesota Wild in 2013, a 5th-round pick. And he's got size. He's 6'5", which is important. I don't know that he's overly physical, but I also, I'd say that size helps. And, he's had some solid experience in the playoffs and some success. But he was with the Minnesota Wild for parts of 3-4 seasons where, I guess towards the end he became more of a regular and he had a very good plus minus. And again, it's a stat that kind of speaks more to the team you're on than necessarily yourself. But and at that point, really more of a third pair role for Carson Soucy. Then before the 21-22 season, he is claimed in the expansion draft by the Seattle Kraken. Now, the same thing happened with Will Borgen from Buffalo. This happens with Carson Soucy from Minnesota. So actually, Soucy and Borgen were, I'm not sure if it was exclusively, but at least for a time, I believe that was a defensive pairing. And so for 2 seasons, Carson Soucy was in Seattle. And the second one was a really good one where Seattle made it to the playoffs and actually won a round. They played 2 rounds and, Soucy played 14 games. I should also mention that he played Soucy 4 games each within 3 different playoffs for Minnesota, 2018, 2020, and 2021, 4 games each of those playoffs. Again, and more of a minimal role. It expands a bit with the Kraken, and he plays all 14 games. He's a +6 as well in those playoffs. And then he signs a 3-year deal with the Vancouver Canucks before last season on July 1st. And last year, now I see he only played 40 games last year, so I guess he must have been hurt for a good amount of it. But I just remember he had a really good playoffs for them. I think he also might have been suspended with the cross-check to Connor McDavid. I believe that led to a suspension for him, but he played 12 games and, put up 5 points. He's more of a defensive defenseman. He's not one to put up offense. And this year, it just really fell off for him. It's not been great. I believe he's actually been a healthy scratch in some recent, within the last couple of months, and maybe even more recently than that. It looks as if he was depended upon for a bigger role this year. Like his ice time is higher. And so I guess the concern that I would have is for me, I would not really want to pair him with Adam Fox, right? Like I don't want Carson Soucy to be like a Ryan Lindgren replacement. I don't think that will work well. And obviously Adam Fox is out now, but it leads to a lot of questions as far as like the defense moving forward this year and beyond. right now, look, Carson Soucy is going to slot into that lineup. He will be in there. And so I guess to start it out, it's and look, here's the thing. By tomorrow's deadline, it wouldn't be a total shocker if one of these defensemen were shipped out. It could happen. Now, in the case of Zach Jones, you'd like to believe with Adam Fox out of the lineup that Zach Jones would continue to stay in for now. But again, the writing is on the wall for Zach Jones. It is what it is, and it may not be fair. But I would still be surprised if Zach Jones was a Ranger by opening night next season. It would surprise me, not because I want it, but just based on everything we're seeing. And Soucy's just another left-handed defenseman. So um, I would tend to think that Calvin DeHaan would be the one that comes out of the lineup right now. It's hard to say what the pairings will be. That's going to be tough to guess. Now, when Adam Fox comes back, it's tough because Keandre Miller, Will Borgen has really been a good pair that you don't want to break up. However, I almost think you're better served going with Keandre Miller with Adam Fox and maybe tapping into what was with the Seattle Kraken and going with Carson Soucy with Will Borgen, or at least giving that a shot. Because we've seen Keandre Miller hasn't with Adam Fox much in their Ranger careers, but when they have been together, it's been pretty intriguing. And so then I guess at that point, it leaves you with Vakanainen and with Schneider. Like, I think when Fox comes back into the lineup, Zach Jones is going to be out. Until then, though, I don't know what they do, right? I mean, I think for now they'll stick with Miller with Borgen. I don't know. Maybe Soucy's paired up with Braden Schneider, and then it leads you with a Vakanainen and Zach Jones pair. Maybe it ends up being Vakanainen with Soucy. Someone's going to be playing on their off wing, on their off side. Now, lately it's been Zach Jones. They tried it once with Vakanainen. I think that I read that Soucy is capable of playing both sides, but I think you're more likely to see him on his natural left side. So it's you can never have enough defensive depth. I wouldn't say that the Rangers necessarily have a boatload of top end defensemen, but they've completely reshaped the blue line. And you just hope that certain players can emerge out of this. And there's a lot of look. I think the good thing here is there's a lot of competition, and obviously Borgen, they extended him for the long term, right? He's going to be here for a while, presumably. But I think for players like Vakanainen, even for Soucy, obviously we know Zach Jones. DeHaan's going to be a free agent, but like you have a lot of players that like have an uncertain future. Even Keandre Miller, you don't know for sure, especially with them bringing in Soucy. I mean, it shouldn't really affect it, but like Keandre Miller, like I think that if he does extend with the Rangers, I think it's more on a shorter term deal. I don't know that they necessarily even have the ability to lock him in long term, and nor has he necessarily shown that you can fully trust that. So again, Soucy, there is that potential that this does not go well. Like I just want to say that. But here's the good news: like when Will Borgen was acquired from Seattle, his numbers were ugly, and there was some levels of success previously. Ironically, Carson Soucy was kind of a part of that a little bit, but Borgen's numbers were really, really bad. And so far, he has done a pretty nice job, right? And there's a lot more to see. It's early returns is all I'm talking about. But you're hoping. I mean, even with Urho Vakanainen, like you look at him and he wasn't really great with the Ducks, and he was actually injured when they made the deal with Jacob Trouba. And so you're just hoping that somehow the Rangers have an idea and a plan where Carson Soucy is not exposed. That would be my concern. And look, the fact of the matter is this: like he's going to have a semi-significant role on this team probably, but it's very hard for me to tell right now who slots where in the pecking order and the depth chart. There's so many new defensemen on this team right now. So your guess is kind of as good as mine as how they'll pair things up. And then, of course, you have the caveat of Adam Fox still being injured. So it's one thing as to how it will look now. It's another thing as to how it will look when he returns. But it's another deal with Vancouver. Obviously, him and JT Miller were teammates with the Vancouver Canucks for the last couple of seasons. I think I also saw that because Soucy had to waive his no-trade clause in order to make this deal happen. So I think that JT Miller might have thrown a pitch to Soucy, and I'm not sure how much of a role that played, but there's a little bit of, Soucy, obviously with Borgen, even more so, but also JT Miller. So he knows a couple of players in the team. And I would think that taking, besides the Chris Carter element to things, I would think that this is generally it. Now I kind of feel, because I kind of thought there was a chance that they would bring someone in. Now it goes back to, there's the chance that they do trade someone on defense. Also, I should mention, and this makes sense to me, Chad Ruedel was called up and Matthew Robertson was sent down. So right now, the Rangers, beside, not even including Adam Fox, have 8 defensemen on the roster. It just makes me wonder if there is a trade up Chris Drury's sleeve with a defenseman going the other way. And we don't know for sure who it is. Zach Jones would be, I guess, the most logical guess, but it could range. You just don't know for sure. Calvin DeHaan, I know they just got him, and I wouldn't think that, the teams aren't clamoring over him, but stranger things have happened. It is possible that he could be sent the other way. If not, then he will be, to me, mostly a healthy scratch. For now, at least, because I just think Zach Jones makes more sense to be in the lineup currently, but I understand when Fox comes back, you might want to switch that line of thinking. So another deal for Chris Drury. This team continues to look different. I mean, it is a very new look. It's nice to have size in the back end, and Soucy certainly provides that at 6'5". But there are concerns that I have as well with this deal too. There's no question about it. It's been a really bad season for him, and you're hoping that he can revert to what he was the seasons prior, right? More of what he did with Seattle and Vancouver last year in the playoffs. So you can get that Carson Soucy, then this is a good acquisition. And look, the price point wasn't crazy. As much as I was obviously happy about the fact that that the Rangers got the San Jose pick, which is really ticketed to be a very high 3rd round pick. Basically, now you relook at today, and it was pretty much Reilly Smith, 50% retained, for Carson Soucy and Brandon Brisson. And obviously, Reilly Smith is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and you have the control of Carson Soucy next year. And again, either he'll help you and help the Rangers be a contender, or if Carson Soucy is at least somehow the combination where he's good enough but the team isn't great, you can still recoup some draft capital or prospects at next year's deadline or something like that. There's always that possibility. That's what we're seeing. So I like the fact that Drury has been buying and selling. I think that's a good way to go about it. And, maybe there's more to come here, but a very quick turnaround. The pick that was acquired from Vegas in the Reilly Smith trade earlier today, that 3rd round pick in 2025, originally of the San Jose Sharks, has now been moved to the Vancouver Canucks for defenseman Carson Soucy, who is under contract through next season with a cap hit of $3.25 million. We will see if this is it as we prepare for tomorrow's trade deadline. And the Rangers defense is certainly looking a lot different than what we saw at the start of the season.